Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Her life took an unexpected turn when our next guest miraculously survived a traumatic brain injury that would reshape her understanding of what it means to be unbreakable. Here to share more, we welcome best-selling and award-winning author of The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over, Naseem Rochette. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us about this day that your world forever changed back in 2018? It really does sound like a true miracle, the way that we see you here thriving today.
I know, you really never know what people have gone through. I mean, no one looks at me and says, wow, she was run over 3 times.
Right.
And yeah, that's what happened. So on May 21st, 2018, I was in a pedestrian crosswalk walking across the street to my husband when a car turned and hit me. And then the car stopped, actually. I was still standing, thought I was fine. And then it accelerated, drove over me, reversed, drove over me again, and then went forward and drove over me a third time with the tires actually going over my body 5 times. And then I was pinned underneath the car.
So how does one even begin to come back from something like that? Because I can imagine just medically, you had to fight through so much.
It was interesting. So it was interesting on so many levels. So first, when I was in the moment, everything was in slow motion. When the car first hit me, I was thinking, I can't believe she's hitting me. I'm having a great day. And oh no, I'm going to be late for dinner. And then, I'm under the car realizing I'm probably never going to get out, listening to my husband's screams and the screams of other people, reflecting back on my life and my 3 children. And, in those moments, I learned some things, thought about some things and that I actually feel grateful for now. And then as the journey under the car continued, I snapped back to the moment when the car finally stopped and realized I couldn't move, I couldn't see, I didn't know if my face was ripped off. And that's when the pain started coming in. And when they took me to the hospital, it was test after test after test, as you can imagine. And then, miracle after miracle, there were no broken bones.
Oh my goodness.
Did not have a single broken bone. I didn't have a skull fracture. Those are the tire marks on my neck in that picture. Clearly I had issues, but nothing that warranted them keeping me in the hospital. So I was actually sent home 24 hours later. I had stitches all over my face. My body was raw. I couldn't move. I couldn't see. I couldn't walk. Certainly couldn't think. The tires ran over my head and neck, but they didn't admit me into the hospital. And so I was sent home to navigate, a recovery, not just a physical, a mental, complete life destruction, change, whatever, word you want to use for everything and think about yourself disappearing in a few minutes.
So you had to really start from scratch.
I did. I often talk about, so I'm a working mother. I've always worked, juggled the kids and the family and, tried to be a school class parent and really do it all. And, that morning I woke up having conquered that, doing it all, and kind of making it look easy. It was never easy, but, I had my routine down. I had my juggle down. And then all of a sudden that person was nowhere to be found. My iPhone didn't recognize me. I certainly couldn't drive my kids. I couldn't see. And what was so hard, Hannah, is that everybody actually wanted to help me, which you think is so fantastic. But for me, who was so used to giving the help, it was just adding to the, complexity of the nightmare. I was so embarrassed that people wanted to help me. That was another, lesson or insight I had to learn and navigate through.
I think a lot of working women, especially working moms, can completely relate to that. But you also are somebody who is totally a joy seeker and chooses the positive. Did that help you put one step in front of the other through this very long process?
Yeah, it definitely did. There are a couple things that really helped me. So, I mentioned that I was really embarrassed by accepting help. Um, During those early weeks, my brother lost his dog and he was devastated. And I wanted to help him. Now he's, saying to me, "Sister, you can't see, you can't walk, you can't move. Don't worry about me." But I realized that I wanted to help him and that people probably wanted to help me because the accident didn't just happen to me, it happened to everybody that loved me too. The other really interesting thing that happened in those early weeks is, as much as I wouldn't take help from my friends or my family, they did convince me to see a trauma therapist. And the doctor that I started seeing taught me about the art and the philosophy of kintsugi, where you take a broken piece of pottery and you put it back together with gold inlay, and you celebrate the cracks in the vase as part of its journey. And that gave me a way to think about and talk about my issues, not as a victim, but this is just part of my journey. And I can still, this is part of my journey, but it's not the end of my story. I still knew I wanted a happy story. I am a joy seeker. It was, not easy, but once I had that reframing and I could turn around the idea of people helping into me offering them something, really made such a big difference in all of the different ways that I took care of myself and appreciated the journey. Because once you start sharing the tough moments, you also get to celebrate with other people. I often
Absolutely.
say, like, if I told you I was holding my coffee cup today, you'd be like, "Why are you telling me about holding your coffee cup?"
Yeah,
But if you knew I had nerve damage, if you knew I
right.
couldn't walk or move or see, you know, then you would appreciate that holding my coffee cup was a really big deal.
Naseem, it's such a beautiful perspective. I wish we could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for stopping by. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you.
The book again is The Unexpected Benefits of Being Run Over. We'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back.